Matt Perry from FEBC joining me now. Thanks for your time today.
Kia ora, Andrew. Good to be here.
Tough times for the people of Ukraine. There's been options towards peace, but Russia doesn't seem to be particularly interested. This is a long war of attrition in many ways. Yes, on the front lines, but also for those living in cities and communities a long way from the front lines.
Yes, sadly, our team there across the country, especially in Kyiv, but east, west, and southeast, they take this with a grain of salt. You know, these stories of possible agreements, of course, because in the first few months they were very concerned and expecting that it would end quickly. Now they are sadly resigned to whatever it takes. So they take that with a grain of salt, and they report at the moment that, if anything, certainly in Kyiv, the air raid sirens at night, the attacks and so on have ramped up. And so all that's doing, apart from the obvious, is raising the anxiety, raising the fear, the trauma, and maintaining that level of adrenaline and concern in people, which is incredibly unhealthy. And so more and more people calling the station. We've talked about this many times before. And what was a temporary telephone counselling service following COVID has become a very permanent and very significant call-in and online counselling service for people impacted by this horrible war.
And of course, Kyiv and other major cities as well. These aren't military targets. This isn't even infrastructure targets. These are regular, at times even nightly, rocket and drone attacks on civilian populations living in suburbs and inner city apartments in different parts of Ukraine. These are innocent civilians who are being targeted here.
Yes, sadly. And again, it's a lesson they learned the hard way early on. Unbelievable, thinking that it was, essentially going to be military for military. And then, of course, they find that the apartment buildings, bridges, and so on didn't come off the target list. Yep. And so one of the other interesting places, we talk about other cities and towns way beyond Kyiv, is the city of Zaporizhia. Mm-hmm. And, again, it hasn't been on our news for a long time, but that's the city in the southeast that is the sort of the caretaker worker support city for the huge nuclear power station that is the biggest in Europe, right there, very nearby. Yeah. So Zaporizhia is a city of over 700,000, or it was. And the Russian army took over that nuclear power station. People will remember that even some explosions early on, and the fear of fallout. And so they've been owning that and controlling it since 2022. Mm-hmm. It's effectively shut down, but it's still a nuclear power station. And so we have broadcast there in the city from central Zaporizhia, and also new gatherings there for listeners who want to get together and meet.
Now, the nuclear power facility in Russian hands, Zaporizhia, essentially still in Ukrainian control, but having a local radio station there. I mean, the thing with radio, as we've said before, that you can broadcast from one place and it's heard many, many miles away. So I'm sure FEBC in Ukraine also being heard by troops on the front lines there.
Yes, absolutely, quite possible.
But the process of having something in the local city, of saying we're broadcasting radio, we have counselling lines, but we are in the city, we are part of this community with you. Here's a place where you can come and gather and get resources. I suppose that's really putting some hands and feet on all of this.
It is, and it's very much our philosophy of ministry that, while we are on air and online, we want to be on the ground and face to face. And not only is it good relationships and good engagement with the community, of course, it allows our people to be incredibly in touch with what listeners long for, what they respond to. And what's intriguing that's come out to us recently, all the way here in New Zealand, is that this particular new meeting at a Baptist church in Zaporizhia, calling listeners to come together, especially widows, women and wives, and sometimes their children, to come together for face-to-face care, sharing each other's stories, hearing from people who've been through what you've been through, and being encouraged by Christians, pastors, and professional counselors. Very, very important. But what we've discovered is that not all Christian churches in Ukraine are completely supportive of women whose husbands, sons, and so on are fighting.
Wow.
And so there's a little bit of a sense among some that Christian men shouldn't fight. But then, of course, when they are drafted, when they're called, and they have no reasonable excuse not to fight, then they have no choice. And of course, people will have very mixed feelings about that. But it's hard to believe, but true, that finding churches that will allow us to host gatherings and bring listeners together is not actually as easy as you'd expect and as it should be.
Well, yeah, it is a difficult thing, but I mean, there is that ethical dilemma, and it's, I suppose, here in New Zealand we can look at it theoretically, the just war theory and all those sorts of things. Those theories are very much in practice as people work out what that means to be people of faith in a war zone, but wonderful that you do have partners. There's Baptist Church in Zaporizhia saying, you know what, our doors are open. This is what faith in action looks like for the local people. We're not here to offer judgment. We're here to offer prayer and support and fellowship for people that are struggling, right?
Yes, 100%. And the other thing that's interesting that's coming out after all these years too is just how people can listen to the program for months, maybe years, listen. People who aren't regularly in church, maybe culturally Christian, but hearts not totally sold out for Jesus. Mm-hmm. They can listen to the program, come along to a meeting face to face, or call the counselling, and have a personal conversation and say, oh, now it makes sense. Now I get it.
Yeah.
And I have a testimony. A woman by the name of Irene rang in Kyiv just very recently and said that. She said, I've been listening for a while, but when I rang, it dawned on me that the Father loves me and has done everything for me to know peace with him.
Wow.
Her whole life was changed, but she'd been listening, but it took a personal conversation, and that's special. That's the face-to-face, that's the call, that's the completed circle of personal and interpersonal relationships.
And that's very much the parable of the sower metaphor of Christian broadcasting in many parts of the world, including here in New Zealand, actually. Some falls on stony ground, but we keep scattering that seed, and we pray to the God of the harvest for good seed into good soil. It sounds like even in some pretty tough situations for the people of Ukraine, God is doing some good things through the FEBC broadcast. Matt, thanks for what you and the team are doing. Thanks for bringing these reports and updates on what God is doing through the ministry. Thanks for being on the program today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.